Ever wish a podcast would explain how to get better faster from the standpoint of longevity, biohacking, and personalized functional medicine? Co-hosts Dr. Jason Bradley and James Chester, along with executive producer Rachel Bradley, bring you the Get Better Faster podcast. Their mission is radically simple: to revolutionize health by connecting people with the experts, technologies, and protocols that mainstream medicine ignores. Because people deserve to get better faster.
All right. Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I am Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one and the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by a true pioneer in functional medicine, someone who has spent over 20 years teaching people how to reverse chronic conditions that conventional medicine often says are incurable. Dr. Patrick Garrett has built a thriving international telehealth practice, helping clients around the world reverse Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, and even genetic conditions through the powerful intersection of lifestyle medicine, functional medicine, clinical nutrition, and epigenetics. With dual training from both medical school and chiropractic school, over 3,500 hours of clinical clerkships, and advanced education from Harvard, Yale, Hopkins, and the University of Melbourne, Dr. Garrett brings a depth of knowledge that's truly extraordinary. He's a diplomate in functional medicine, holds 3 diplomates in clinical nutrition, and currently serves as the chairman of the board of directors for the American Board of Functional Medicine. But what makes Dr. G's revolutionary approach is that he's showing doctors and health coaches how to achieve these incredible results without expensive labs, without supplement gimmicks, and just pure evidence-based functional lifestyle medicine. He's a global keynote speaker, hosted his own healthy cooking television show, and has trained healthcare professionals worldwide through his 300-hour postdoctoral programs. He's even conducting NIH-approved research on proteogenomic psychiatry, and I personally can't wait to dive into that. This is going to be a game-changing conversation about what's truly possible when we address chronic disease at its root. Without further ado, Dr. G, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate being here and sharing.
Yeah, it's really good to get to know you over the past year and a half or so. I know I've had you over on our other show, Chiro Hustle podcast, and I've gotten to see you and track your life a little bit, and you're quite an impressive dude. Lots of cool interests, and I'm sure that there's a lot of things that we aren't going to talk about today that are in your personal life that I have some behind the scenes to, but I'm really curious about your clinical work. And you have a dual background in both medical school and chiropractic school. That's like thousands of hours, man, in two completely different paradigms and disciplines. When did you know that you had discovered something that you could help people get better faster, which either system wasn't offering alone? When did you decide to tie that together and weave it into something that became your body of work today?
Well, I think probably year 3.5 within doing medical rounds, I was just completely exhausted with the approach that they had in medicine. We weren't fixing anybody. And that was kind of the promise of when you start that is like, you're going to fix all these things. And, you know, within chiropractic, I had a little bit of disillusion of like, people just are going to eat Cheetos and not move and then keep coming back to you. Like, I don't feel like we're fixing everything. And then I thought medical school would kind of fill in the gaps with that. But really, it was just more medication and more referrals and more medication and more referrals. Only in surgery did I feel like we were doing something great. Your arm hurts, chop it off, problem solved, right? But all that chronic management stuff just was defeating. Like, it was not what I signed up for. And so I met some functional medicine doctors and some clinical nutritionists that said they could reverse chronic conditions. And I was like, I don't want to hear it from you. I want to hear it from your patients. So I literally took off school and just followed them around for a couple of weeks. And I just talked to the patients, and that blew my mind that there was literally this other world that was out there that had that kind of potential. So that is kind of where I just was like, I'm already a doctor. I can do what I want at this point. And I feel like I know enough from both sides to really just implement a really good clinical nutrition kind of functional medicine practice.
Well, I know that Dr. Jason, his discipline is in functional medicine also, and his sweet spot, if you would say, is helping people with their thyroid and Hashimoto's. But yours led you to Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis as something that you've seen as where your zone of genius went to. How did you come up with that as the plan for the next stage in your career, helping people with those conditions?
Well, so I kind of reject management, even from the natural standpoint. I'm always like, how we fix? The only goal is fix. And so I had this really unique opportunity to attend Harvard Medical School's lifestyle medicine program. And that was the first coursework ever that said, patient's Crohn's, what are they doing to cause it? Patient has diabetes, what are they doing to cause it? Patient has migraines, what are they doing to cause it? And it kind of really changed that thought process for clinical perspectives of, are they just causing all the chronic problems? So we're always just like, back when I used to teach the first postdoc programs years ago, it was like, we'd have, say, hypertension. And it would be like, okay, who in here can fix hypertension? We had medical doctors and chiropractors all in the group, and they'd all raise their hands. I was like, well, without drugs, and like half the hands would go down. I was like, well, without supplements, all the hands went down. And I'm like, we keep saying the body's designed to heal itself, given the right opportunities, but apparently God's waiting for someone to come up with a supplement company or a pharmaceutical company, and then that's the only way we can fix people. And so, like, the idea of knowing the body's designed to heal itself given the right opportunities, and then that Harvard kind of mentality of like, what if you taught them consistently to stop causing? They're literally genetically designed to heal. They're physiologically designed to heal. All the complication of all the biochemistry and all these pathways we get excited about when we teach these courses, if you didn't know any of it, it still just heals. There's no animal figuring this stuff out. There's no country that's bigger, better, stronger, healthier that's trying to figure this stuff out. But because we are so chronically sick, and because it's profitable to be sick and it's profitable to manage, that kind of is where the goal is. And so, like, my brain is just, I want to know 20 different ways to fix the same thing. And I'm cheap. So I'm like, I wouldn't do stuff that all these people are doing. Like, you better tell me how to fix it or I'm not participating, right?
Well, I think, I hear you on that, and I, with my 2.5 decades in the trenches with functional medicine as well, I mean, the longer I do my job, the more I just keep coming back to, the same 6 pillars, which are totally, stolen from my book, The Epic 5 Plan, which are basically, drink enough water, eat real food, move every day, work on nervous system regulation, get some good sleep, and surround yourself with a healthy community. And when I find that people are doing that, these types of chronic incurable conditions get better over time. I mean, it might not be a quick fix, but time and consistency is always our friend. I want to go back to this idea though. And I love what you said from Harvard, that, we keep saying that the body can heal itself given the right opportunities, that we're genetically and physiologically designed to heal. I love that we're hearing that, kind of from the horse's mouth there at Harvard. But my experience, so I'm asking about your experience. My experience has been, despite that, I don't see doctors in the trenches in first line care, primary care, general care, or even specialty care taking that to heart. I mean, it's drop down menus to a quick diagnosis and drop down menus to the drug for that diagnosis or referral for that diagnosis. It's I always say any monkey can do that. So you've got, your foot kind of on both sides of the fence there with, kind of in with the in crowd, so to speak, the conventional traditional crowd and understanding the way they think. But then you also are a pioneer in, functional medicine and functional genomics. And we'll dive into that. My experience has been that there really isn't a lot of general practitioners grabbing hold of this idea that the body can heal itself, that the power that made the body heals the body. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. What are you experiencing?
Yeah. Well, and kind of tying that back into what your original question, James, which is why Crohn's and ulcerative colitis are like, when people come in, I'm smiling. They're telling me that they poop 30 times a day and bleed like a stuffed pig. And I'm like, your whole life's going to change very quickly. Because those are my favorites, because your gut tissue turns over every 2 weeks. The minute you stop causing the autoimmune condition, you stop attacking that tissue, you heal up, and then it's very satisfying. Something like MS will take quite a while because nerve tissue turns over very slowly. But like Crohn's and eczema, man, that's fast. Anxiety and depression, those are fast things typically. And it's all about your toolbox, right? So like all through medical school, all through those 3,500 hours of clinical rounds, ain't nobody talking about curing anything. Never. That is never what they're looking for. And the university, it's kind of all summed up in maybe like the New England Journal of Medicine published this research from the Washington School of Medicine. And they said that 52% of the time, the diagnosis and treatment is incorrect. And the best they were doing, I think was, and don't quote me exactly on the numbers, but I think it was like 96% of the doctors correctly identified and treated upper respiratory, right? You got a little cough, a fever. Yeah, okay. But for gut, it was 38% of the time they were correct on diagnosis or treatment. But that means 62% of the time they were incorrect. And they asked the author of the research why that is, and they said, well, we are not taught to be primary care anymore. We're taught to be emergency. And emergency is triage, is top 3. So you get your 15 minutes with that patient, and within 5 minutes, you should have, or 2 minutes, you should have a tentative diagnosis, and it's your top 3. What are the top 3? Next patient. What are the top 3? Next patient. What are the top 3? Well, you can't do a good physical or diagnosis within that short amount of time. So what if it's a 4th thing or a 5th thing or interfering factor or a differential diagnosis? They don't care about that. Or not care, but they just don't have time for that, because 1972, we created HMOs, and then everything became about profit, and the average patient's interrupted within the first 18 seconds. They have a tentative diagnosis in 2 minutes, and they have a prescription or out the door in 5 minutes because we got quotas to fill. And the goal with that, and that tool bag, is not, tell me about your family life. Tell me about your diet. What could you be doing to cause this problem? I mean, the amount of time we spend with patients in like my clients with my clinic, it's an hour each visit. I try to do less, but it takes about an hour to convince people that everything that they hear in all these different gimmicks are not real. This is how the body works. This is why you're messing it up. And this is why you're having this clinical outcome. And this is why it's so important we make these changes. But my pharmaceutical book was this big. My second pharmaceutical book was that big, and the next one was that big. My nutrition book didn't even exist. It wasn't a thing. It was not even on the thought. But 2 generations ago, every medical doctor was a natural doctor. It wasn't until the AMA that they started synthesizing coal tar into permanent, sustaining, naturally occurring medicines, which we call pharmaceuticals. And then that AMA changed all the medical schools, what they taught and what doctors could prescribe. And very quickly, nutrition and lifestyle just doesn't exist. And you don't have time now with the way that they created the physician time to even approach those considerations. And you have to know so much extra stuff about everything that everybody's talking about and why it's wrong. And here's the biochemical processes. And nobody has time for that. So it's just not even on the menu when you look at most physicians.
It's totally true. And just to kind of give a little context for that, for our listeners, it was back in, I believe, the 1930s, roughly, that the Flexner report came out. Flexner was hired by, Rockefeller and the bigwigs that were owning the coal tar petroleum-based pharmaceutical companies, patent medicine companies. And basically they said, hey, Flexner, what can we do to get the medical doctors prescribing our stuff and not doing natural medicines or lifestyle medicine anymore? And Flexner came back and basically said, fund the schools like crazy, give them more money than they'll ever need. Tell them the condition is they can only teach pharmaceutically your pharmaceuticals, and that's the only cure. Create the AMA, fund them, create standards of care that this is, if you want to be a practicing doctor, at least in the United States, you have to follow these rules. And Rockefeller said, what happens to everybody that's been trained this other way? The old school doctors, like Dr. D was just talking about. And Flexner said, they're dinosaurs, they'll die off eventually. And that's where we are today. We're almost 100 years later, a few generations in, and, we're the most over-medicated country on the planet. 5% of the world population consumes 75, 80% of the world drugs right here in our good old US of A. And I always say there ain't no money in healthy people. There's no money in healthy people or dead people. The sweet spot is keeping them dependent on your drugs as long as you can, indefinitely. And when those drugs cause, side effects, give them a drug for the side effect and just keep stacking and stacking. James, I want to pass it over to you. It looks like you have something smart to say.
Well, I just had a follow up to what you were sharing there. And it is a question for Dr. Garrett here. And it's because you're talking about the big problem and the mess that we're in. And Dr. Garrett's talking about the issue with his clinical studies of what he saw as there was a gap. And now there's solutions. And that's the educated mind coming into play. Is you see a problem, you start filling the gap, you start fixing it with new information. And now we have this new earth that we all live on, where functional medicine and doctors of cause and correction are becoming a thing that most people are starting to seek out. But when you reverse somebody's chronic conditions using your approach, Dr. Garrett, what does the rest of their life look like? Because I'm really curious. And is this something they have to maintain intensively forever, or does the body reach a new homeostasis?
So good question, because what we really do is create lifestyle, right? Change how you eat, change how you stress, and change the chemicals that you have to overcome. And it's not about perfection. It's always process over perfection. You're not going to get it in the US. Like literally your solution to most of your chronic problems is just get a plane ticket and get the hell out of here. Go live in a country that's healthier, happier, and live longer, right? But if you're here, you have to know a bunch of stuff and apply it, right? So like we make these changes and we spend an hour each time, and we spend about 6 to 8 weeks before, pretty much within 6 weeks, most things are just gone already, right? 6 months, they're a whole different person. It takes 6 weeks to literally create new habits with them, right? They start thinking about chemicals different. They start considering how they eat different, but it's not really a new person. So everybody goes through this process of what's called hero's journey. And that is a systematic process for every hero, for every major movie you watch, everybody going through a divorce, everybody making a transition in their life. And the reality is the number one outcome to a hero's journey is refusal of the call. It's too hard. It's too difficult. How do I do these things? You don't have your mentor in place. You don't have options, or someone kind of teaching you the options. But even if they do this, 6 weeks, 92% of all people that make lifestyle changes and resolutions will fail within 6 months. Most of them within the first month, because when trauma happens, people go back to status quo. They go back to the comfort. Even people that live in abuse will stay in abuse because it's predictable abuse. But it's the same abuse from your food. It's the same abuse from your relationships. It's the same abuse you have with your chemicals. So the goal is to create a 26-week interaction of accountability buddy over time, where they don't fall back to their old way. They complete their hero's journey to the point where they become the light, and they can't even imagine going back to the old ways. That's the long-term sustainable fix for Crohn's and eczema and migraines and weight loss and all these kind of things, is create a lifestyle that's consistent with life and longevity without gimmicks and nonsense. And
keeping them away from poison.
Yeah. And typically, if you feel good, it is unacceptable to feel bad again. And so our Crohn's patients, the goal is to not have to worry about Crohn's in the future, to where you can start adding certain foods in and kind of live a more normal life, but not go back to that breaking point. So
how do you yeah, but I'm just like, how do you determine what an individual like that has Crohn's? Because I have somebody in my family that deals with this and they manage it with drugs. Okay. And I'm like, well, that's not sustainable. And I'm just curious, like their new world. When does this go into play where they actually start to discover that they have a new, I guess, gut biome, and their personality improves and they're not so curmudgeon-y and their attitude improves and things like that?
Well, with Crohn's and stuff, usually within a couple of weeks, they notice substantial differences.
That's right? Awesome.
And then within 6 weeks, it's just like, oh my God, I've had Crohn's for 23 years.
Yes.
And what I love, so this is probably the key to that answer, is when people don't do what they used to do. So we had a girl that she had horrible Crohn's. Everywhere they go, the first thing is, where's the bathrooms? They have to know immediately where the bathrooms are, right? They'll even mom will look up stuff to know where the bathrooms are. And then at a certain point, they give me a call or they message me and they're like, oh my gosh, we went to a new park. We did not even know where the bathrooms were. And that's when you know, when they stop keeping toilet paper on their gear shift in their car, when they stop keeping a change of clothes at work, when they go running and they don't look for bushes all the time. Like, that's the most beautiful moment, because especially when people start feeling good and they've had this for, 5, 10, 20 years, it's not real yet. So there's that first little, they probably already have more anxiety when they don't have it, because they're just like, when is it going to happen? It's fine, right? Like, this trauma stopped happening, but it's going to happen. And am I going to be prepared? And then eventually they just realize it's not going to happen. And then they go eat a Chick-fil-A and then they have a flare. But I'm like, don't eat a Chick-fil-A, because that MSG will definitely cause your flare. So,
Well, I think it's interesting too, kind of coming back to what James was asking, does the body, it's an interesting question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I have my own thoughts on it that I'll save for a second. But the question that James kind of embedded in there is, when we get to that state of feeling healthy and we're not having those flares and we're not running to the bathroom or whatever it happens to be with your symptoms, I get the same question that I think that James asked and that you probably get. How long do I have to do this? Or when can I go to Chick-fil-A? When can I, eat my X, Y, or Z? What would you say back to that? I'm just curious.
Well, so again, the goal is not perfection. People in other countries that don't have these chronic conditions, they're not perfect, but can we just make enough meaningful changes that your histamine levels, your immune kind of resiliency can take a shot? Because a lot of times people are like, oh, well, Dr. G, do you eat perfect? No, I don't eat perfect. Sometimes I pay a price and sometimes I don't. But when I pay a price, I know what caused that. So for the most part, you're like, I don't want to feel depressed anymore. I don't want to have Graves' disease anymore. I don't want to have irritable bowel disease anymore. I want to go to a party, not spend the time in the bathroom, So I'm kind of crass about stuff. So I'm like, well, how long do you have to stop smoking crack? Mm-hmm. Well, can I do a little crack, and get away with it? You might be able to, but why would you smoke crack, right? Why would you eat the stuff that made you feel horrible in the first place? Why would you be in situations or go back to the old kind of hormonal ways that is exhausting? So I feel like most people, once they get to where they are like dramatically a different person, they don't want to go back to the old way. But they also don't have to be perfect. So they'll figure out they can maybe fudge a little bit here and there and still do really well. And then they will find their certain places they cannot mess around.
Well, Dr. Jason, that tees me up for this follow-up for Dr. Patrick here. Is like Crohn's. We're just talking about that. It's a topic that we've been going on for a minute here. How do people typically get it?
Oh, well, so. So disease is super simple. We always act like disease are these mysterious things or unpredictable. They are absolute predictable outcomes from abnormal diet and lifestyle. You are part of a 350 million guinea pig experiment of how many microplastics till you start having brain problems, how many estrogenic pesticides till you get man boobs, right? That's all we're doing. And so if you know what causes these problems, then it becomes very easy to understand this. All autoimmune, most people don't know this. They don't teach this in school really at all, but it's T cell dysregulation and secondary molecular mimicry. We have this down, and I teach this in the Mentoring Functional Medicine coursework, right? And it is such a simple thing, but it explains all this stuff because we're to the point now, we know Epstein-Barr, its viral antigen mimics very specific foods like dairy or casein whey, which then mimic the myelin sheaths of the nerves. So the human body is made 100% from food. So human antigens and food antigens look very, very similar. And so if you know that, then it's just like, okay, two different things that look very close, but then microbes like bacteria and viruses, their goal is to mimic what they see. So if we go to war, I'm not wearing my polo. I'm going to dress like I'm a tree or a bush or sand and snow. And the better that I can doppelganger or mimic my environment, the longer I get to raise havoc in that war. But that means if your immune system is chronically suppressed, it might mistake that food antigen as that pathogen that's mimicking it. So Epstein-Barr virus goes away. It's gone. But that T cell and B cell, the neighborhood watch and the police of the immune system, if they are chronically suppressed, now they think that your casein protein is the same as Epstein-Barr. And every time you eat dairy, you create a histamine inflammatory reaction. That chronically creates this inflammatory process. But when it then mistakes the tissue of, like, say, TPO for thyroid or myelin sheaths for nerves, or whatever the collagen in the gut or the small intestine, we only name autoimmune conditions based on the secondary molecular mimic. So if you can figure out which are the intermediate molecular mimics, those are the ones that they constantly eat, cause the immune system to attack that tissue. That's your autoimmune. So you identify those ones, you get rid of those ones like they're the plague, and that shuts down that attack. Then you have to fix the lifestyle of the diet, the added sugar usually, and the stress, which makes sugar, and the chemicals that all chronically suppress the immune system to make the mistakes in the first place. So the short-term resolution is stop causing the problem. The long-term is make the lifestyle changes that cause the problem. And by doing that, that's where your permanency or your long-term, you don't have autoimmune anymore, comes in. So does that make sense? Like, it's an hour-long discussion of explaining all this kind of stuff I do with clients and patients over the years. But it's really, I mean, it's just a mistake. And you make a memory and you keep repeating a mistake until someone understands how that mistake is made and how you're going to fix it.
Go ahead, James.
Well, just until the pain comes so bad that you say, today's the day. And
yeah,
that's the one hell of a motivator right there, is when the day becomes the day.
Yeah, nobody makes any changes until the pain of their current situation is greater than the pain of change. That little coefficient of friction is that one day that you find your breaking point, and it's unacceptable.
And I think that breaking point can be a breakthrough, right? I mean, it's if we allow it to be, right?
If they know someone that can fix it, like you, right? So,
or you.
Like, without that mentor, it's just everybody
me.
No, I think it's really interesting. This is what I just have a comment really fast about the Epstein-Barr. I don't know why, but especially being a thyroid guy, I'm actually preparing incredible thyroid presentation for the Great Prairie Conference next year. I hope that you can make it. It's going to be revolutionary. But I'm reminded of the medical medium. I don't know if y'all remember him or not. What was the Anthony William? I don't think he's around anymore or shouldn't be around anymore. Maybe he should. I don't know. I'm trying not to judge. But he basically wrote this book and said, man, what's driving, thyroid issues, and especially autoimmune thyroid issues, is Epstein-Barr. Everybody's got Epstein-Barr. And if you get, he's psychic and knew these things. And I think we all know, everybody in practice, like, everybody's been exposed to that. Like, I mean, it's like everybody's been exposed to that virus. I mean, that's not rocket science. That's not psychic ability. That's just knowing statistics more than anything else. But what I'm really hearing from that is it's this mimicry of, yes, you were exposed, and then our T cells, our immunoglobulins will form, some type of reaction to that antigen, that viral load. And then that specific attack gets confused because our tissues look a lot like that virus. And so our body, in its hypervigilant state, I mean, its whole job, our body's job, is to keep us safe from foreign invaders. I mean, it's one of the things that our immune system does. And when we have a hypervigilant immune system, probably due to the microplastics and the petrochemicals, pesticides, xenoestrogens, other, frankenfoods that we're putting in our body, the body gets confused and it starts attacking our tissues. Yeah. And I find that like a really nice way of saying that. So I appreciate that. The other thing that I got out of this, and it just underscores everything that, I've learned over the last 2.5 decades, which is the real medicine in the most practical way to say this is on your plate and at the end of your fork. you know, and if people could own that, if there's no other, for me, if there's no other take home from working with a genius like you, changing your diet is going to change not just your health, but your emotions, your vitality, really your ability to live. So I just wanted to, you know, pull those things out and share that and say, thank you for sharing those things.
Yeah. I think the easiest example that I really love is like telling patients or clients, if you dated a guy in high school that drove a red Camaro and they cheated on you and broke your heart, every red Camaro after that is that son of a bitch. But it's never that dude. But you will have a physiological response, an emotional response, an immune response to a car that's never the right car. And that's all that molecular mimicry is. It's just the food is the car, the tissue is the car. It's just a mistake, but it still has a consequence to it.
I find that really interesting. And I'm not pivoting, I'm just inserting, I think is a better way to think here. You have a massive background, understanding, and practical help that you have helped countless people around the world in genomics, working with the genes, epigenomics. And you mentioned something to the effect, I didn't write it down exactly, but something to the effect of, hey, we're 350 million people here and we're under this experiment of microplastics and xenoestrogens and all this other stuff, right? Yeah. Which we are. And we are, again, no one will argue against this. We're the sickest country. I don't know what word you hear, but Western, modernized, industrial country on the planet. I mean, right. We're very, very sick. Why don't people in other countries have these same problems? From my understanding, we all kind of have the same genetics. I mean, we're all human, give or take, 0.5% or whatever that is. What's going on? What's unique about Americans? Do we have bad genes? What's going on?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So genetics is never destiny. DNA is not destiny. You are constantly mutating and reversing DNA all day, every day in every single cell, right? But we live in the sickest, fattest. I always your cheapest solution is get a plane ticket and get the hell out of here, right? But you live in the sickest, fattest, dumbest country with the most anxiety and depression in the entire planet, where 3 out of 4 people chronically manage chronic conditions so they go broke or die prematurely. Because our goal is different. It's to chronically manage people. That's all it is. And so because of the cultivation of how the HMOs were created, and then how the AMA is created, and then how food lobbies basically buy the government, Monsanto funds presidential elections, and then they appoint people from those companies into oversight. And then, that's how it all created this whole unique situation we have with 350 million guinea pigs paying the price. But other countries, especially with socialized medicine, the whole premise of socialized medicine, which is every country but America, is if we let companies poison you for profit, don't worry, we'll cover all your healthcare costs. No country can afford a sick, fat, dumb population. Right. So if the responsibility is on the government to pay for sick, fat, dumb people, they just ban this stuff. So you're not going to get Pop-Tarts anywhere else in the world. You're not getting Extreme with Mountain Dew anywhere else in the world. The bread that we make here would get you 15 years in prison and $500,000 fine trying to make that shit in Singapore. So here, nobody cares. If you go to the zoo with your kids, the food that they feed you in America at the zoo, you cannot feed to the animals at the zoo because it will impair their immune system. They get sick and they will die. Nobody cares about your health here because no one's responsible.
Because your sickness is for profit.
That's right. And like you were talking about medicine earlier, I'm telling you, one of the most mind-blowing concepts is only in medicine can you cause more damage and get a billable code and paid more the more you cause damage. Like during surgery, we're doing a mastectomy. My mentor nicked an artery, and we got paid for nicking that artery. We got paid for the follow-up for nicking that artery. Every other job, if you broke something, you're going to fix that thing. I'm not paying for it. But in medicine, it's the only job where you literally get paid the worse you are. Isn't that crazy?
It's insane, and I think the general populace here in America is what I'm talking about. I don't think we really realize how bad it is.
No.
I mean, we've been duped from birth, pre-birth. Now we're generation.
Pride thing. It's pride.
Yeah. I mean, there's what's that Mark Twain quote, the Samuel Clemens, it's the hardest thing to do is to convince someone they've been tricked or something like that. I messed that up. But I mean, the reality is, even if you go to, because you always hear, trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. And you go to the editors of, the New England Journal and JAMA and Lancet and BMJ. I'm just quoting, I'm paraphrasing, not quoting Marcia Angel, editor for the New England Journal. She basically said not quite verbatim, but it's pay to play. The things that are published there, Dr. G, going back to what you were saying, the papers that are published, the science that's published, it's pay to play. The drugs that are, quote, approved by the FDA, it's pay to play. I mean, they stack the FDA board with the revolving door of, the pharmaceutical execs, and then now they're government execs, and then they're back to the pharmaceutical execs again. And they're just, it's all so incestuous. And people think, oh, it's FDA approved, it must be this or that. But the drugs that are approved by the FDA in this country are not even legal in other countries. 73%, they say, that of the drugs that are approved in this country really don't have any scientific backing on it, whatsoever. And then continuing down what Angel said, I'm a little heated now, thank you. Continuing down what Angel said, she said, by the time you walk into the traditional medical doctor's office or the traditional medical office, you're being ambushed. You're literally being ambushed in America to be put onto a drug with the F word, which is forever. I challenge people to go to their medical doctors. I mean, granted, there's a whole different discussion we can have about antibiotics and whatnot, but short course drugs, antibiotics, prednisone, sometimes, taking those aside, if you have a chronic condition and you ask your medical prescriber, how long am I going to be on this? What's the plan to get me off of this? They will look at you like a deer in headlights. Like, what the heck do you mean get off of it? You're going to be on this for the rest of your life. So I really appreciate you opening up this can of worms. This is a big question. I agree with you. I've even said that we have to take personal responsibility. We're never going to have this free medical system that everybody wants until we instill culpability on the individual. Most other countries, when you look at Japan, places in Europe, other places that do quite well and live a lot longer than we do, they're not having the chronic conditions because people have to maintain a healthy weight. People are expected to maintain a healthy lifestyle in a lot of different ways. And here we're like, drink to the devil and dance to the doctor. And that's what we do. I'm unpacking a lot in my own head, so thank you. I didn't mean to go on this, diatribe, soliloquy, whatever you want to call it. But Dr. G, I want to turn over to you. What are your thoughts on whatever I just vomited over everybody?
Well, yeah. So, I think it was Sweden back years ago. They had fallen down a few points in the world's healthiest countries. And so as a country, they were like, how can we be healthier? Because it costs less as a country to be healthier. So they put in more walkways. They put in more places to have kind of outdoor activities. They increased the production and kind of like promotion of fruits and vegetables. And all of a sudden, they bumped right back where they were, right? And so it depends on what the motivation is. And if the motivation is blindly just money, everybody becomes the sacrifice for that until they go broke, right? So like even during, I always talk, when I talk about hormone balance, we always balance hormones without taking hormones, which will downregulate your own production through the negative feedback loop. But the goal is to just stop exhausting your hormones. But if you look at what's called the rectangular hormonal lifespan, most Americans, they feel fantastic when they're in their teens. And then they start exhausting the hell out of their hormones. And then they want to feel better. So they do wheat, which is morphine, and dairy, which is 3 different morphines or 4 different morphines. Then they do a bunch of sugar, which is like crack cocaine. Then they do energy drinks and nicotine and caffeine. And then eventually about 35 years old, most people will find their emotional breaking point, right? But and then they end up on Prozac. 100% people get worse, 30% get numb, and then they just feel like crap and want to die, right? So the whole thing is eat, distract, feel like crap, want to die. But the rectangular hormonal lifespan is just like in Europe. You want to just kind of feel pretty good and die one day. That's the goal. But that means people have to react differently. And so the way that they exhaust their hormones for Americans is like, oh my God, that was so stressful. I'm going to eat a candy bar. Oh my God, that was so stressful. I'm going to watch TV. We just eat and distract, feel like crap, and have a panic attack, heart attack. But you notice, like during COVID, I went to Europe all through COVID, and it was the calmest, most peaceful place. People wore a mask, didn't wear a mask. People were social distancing, but most people weren't social distancing. But what you didn't see the whole time is constant outrage all day, every day about what everybody else wasn't doing. And so we call that a whole quality of life that Americans don't even know exists. So those countries really are just wired differently for a different cause. And I don't think it's altruistic. I think it's just, if you have to pay for sick people, you don't want to pay for sick people. So you create happier places, healthier places, right? I mean, at the train stations in Europe, I could get better food than the health food stores here. I could go to a gas station in pretty much any country and get fresh berries. It's just super easy to be healthy, happy, and balanced in countries that are super healthy, happy, and balanced. But in America, it is hard. It's
about choices. And when you only have one choice in one direction, that's the way you go. And I appreciate you sharing so much about the composition of being abroad and being here domestically. And I'm going to pass this back to Jason here in a moment. I just have a few poignant things to say. And you guys were talking about, if I take this med, do I have to take it the rest of my life? Even if it's a limited med, it has long-term effects on your body. That's the part where if they put you on a Z-Pack or something and it's only for a week, it destroys your gut microbiome and causes many, many downstream effects of lifestyle illness that people don't talk about. So even if it is just for a headache, say you take 5 Advil for your migraine, what they don't tell you is that NSAID, whatever it is, what it does to the body, is not just getting you through that moment to get you functioning again, but there's a real concern with that XYZ 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 months down the line. And the point I'm trying to make here is when people come into you, how do you determine what course of action that they need based on their lifestyle choices? And do you do like lab work and panels? Do you like give them like supplements, or do you even give them meds sometimes? Like how do you trick the body to use your method to where you get better outcomes?
Well, so it's all based on the radical idea of simplicity. It is really simple to be healthy and happy. It's really really easy to be very sick. So if we know our job is to say, what does a lifestyle worth living look like? How do you eat differently? How do you socialize differently? How do you stress differently? How do you chemicalize differently? So, in the beginning, we're taught this, like, there's no one way to fix everybody. Yeah, there is. I mean, again, when you look at the blue zones and the 9 things they consistently do, yeah, just do that. Right? I mean, what if you just did all these components and does everything work out? So like, even I've been in practice over 20 years, but I have not done hormone testing in 15 years. You know why? Because the first 5 years, it was never what you didn't expect already. Oh my God, I'm so exhausted. We should test my hormones. Yeah, you're exhausted. Why don't you stop being exhausted and then they'll be normal? Patients that are like, oh my God, I'm so jacked up. I can't sleep. I can't function. Yeah, they're high. Like, it was never a surprise. So we don't really do a whole lot of laboratory work, because if the goal is just to fix, let's just fix stuff. That's your cheapest, easiest solution, is why don't you stop causing problems, do what the healthiest, happiest, longest living populations do consistently, and see if everything goes to normal. And literally everything goes to normal. It is very rare to have to do something extra. So go ahead.
No, I think you're totally right. And I think we could just hang out and talk for hours here, because this is like what I like to talk about. It brings up that I had for my master's project, my master's in journalism from the Adler School of Journalism, second ranked school of journalism in the country, right after Columbia. I just like to brag about that. But for my thesis, I wanted to write what would happen to our economy if we all woke up tomorrow and we were all healthy. Like, just what would happen to our economy? And I'll give you the skinny part of it. The skinny part is, our GDP at minimum, I mean, conservatively, $1 out of every $5 goes into sick care. And probably it's more than that. It's probably closer to 33, 35%. And essentially our economy would collapse. I mean, if you can imagine yanking a third of our money out of the infrastructure of the machine that churns, our economy would collapse. Here's the thing. My committee would not let me do that. It didn't even get approved. It wasn't even approved to explore, even though I had data to come up with. I ended up doing a good thesis, I think, on soldiers returning from the Middle East and the lack of healthcare in the VA, and we could go on about that someday. But I just wanted to share that little tidbit. The other thing, going back to COVID, I'm going to bring up something a little controversial. Going back to COVID, and it's not even vaccines, everybody. Something else. It's maybe even more controversial. I don't know. We'll find out. Going back to COVID, I think that those of us that were, in the positions that you were in and I was in, and we, I think, did the best that we could with the data that we had available to us and the communities we had available to us to share with our followers, with our people, what our thoughts were that was going on. And I was one of those guys that was watching Worldometer and looking at the death rates and the statistics and all this and trying to make sense of all of it, looking at, who are the people that are dying. And of course, as we mentioned, 3 out of 4 Americans, 75% of us have at least one or more chronic health condition and on, multitudes of drugs. The people that were dying and continue to have complications with these types of, infections or pseudo-infections or quasi-infections, whatever you want to call them, manufactured or not, they are chronically ill. They are overweight. They typically are older and they typically haven't taken care of themselves. I'm going to pause there for a minute and add in another thing. As we all know, everybody on this call knows, but for our listeners, and this blew me away when I heard this for the first time. Over 75% of Americans, think about this, in the 350 million experiment, right? 75% of us are overweight or obese, and over 40%. So more people are actually obese than just overweight. I mean, 40 point, whatever it is, percent of Americans are obese. And when I was looking at that data and I start looking at, chronic health conditions and, what's kind of a common thread through all of it, it tends to be weight. I mean, weight tends to be an overriding factor over and over and over again in the manifestation, if you will, in the flares of these chronic conditions. The more weight someone has, the more ill they are typically. I want to be careful here. I'm not saying that big isn't beautiful. That's not what I'm saying. But I am challenging that big is healthy, because we have this idea that you can be bigger and be healthy. And I've seen those people. I've ran those labs, and I'm always astounded when their liver enzymes come back and they're, this and that, and they look good. But overwhelmingly, that's not what I see. Overwhelmingly, I see the insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, fill in all those gaps. The reason I bring all that up is that early in COVID, by 2020, I did a masterclass on surviving COVID. And all of my research came to one conclusion, that we have, and I called it an issue of national security with how overweight and obese our country is. And if we wanted to actually change the trajectory of the health in our country and save people from dying from these things, we would start implementing, policy level, governmental level diet and nutrition guidelines that really make sense. This is the controversial part. That's not even the controversial part. The controversial part was when I said, and I think that EBT and SNAP programs and WIC programs should really only pay for whole, real, unprocessed foods and give the people that are in the hardest areas with the most challenging finances a fighting chance to be healthy. And the feedback and the pushback that I get all the time is, oh, so you're saying poor people can't give their kids Twinkies. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. I just don't know that our government programs need to be paying for it. I really do feel like it's an issue of national security. I really mean that. Dr. G, I'd love to turn that, or James, you want to jump in, and then I just want to hear Dr. G's thoughts on this.
I just have 2 points, and then I'll pass it to Dr. Patrick. And one of the things is people know if you drink motor oil, you'll get sick. But
sure.
When you titrate a little bit of a compound of motor oil into yogurt, into Twinkies, into other consumables, and you take that in at a microdose, little by little, day by day, week by week, month by month, it's like drinking motor oil. But nobody ever says don't drink motor oil because it's already being laced into our food. We know that back in the day, if you wanted to kill somebody, you would lace them with arsenic. And that's, really taboo. But if you think about lacing us with high fructose corn syrup, and you think about lacing us with this bleached wheat and bleached flour that Dr. Patrick was talking about earlier, what's going to happen? Your body becomes, it's like, there's an invader. I'm going to get sick now. I'm going to put weight on to protect me from the sickness. And now we have these comorbidities that you're talking about. And the thing is nobody ever says, hey, fucking do some push-ups. Hey, fucking go run a mile. Like, nobody's saying this stuff. And that's the thing, is that's why we have to bandstand this truth with each other. And sometimes I will swear, and I do get fired up because we are titrated with death, but people think that that's convenience, and it's not whole food. So if you wanted to change national security, you'd have cooking classes on the products that people could afford, and you would have physical fitness courses that would be included into those SNAP programs to when people bought the food, they'd have instruction and guidance, and they would have mentorship throughout that program, and they wouldn't be left alone dying with a fucking Twinkie in their mouth.
Amen.
Well, and that's what that whole thing of like survive. Everybody wants to survive for what? So you can be sad all the time. So you can be on 12 medications. So you can, be dragging your leg behind you for the next 20 years. What are you surviving for? Right? I mean, just know the only goal of being healthy in America is so you can watch all your friends die first. That's the only actual goal. The healthier you are, the slower you're going to die, and the more funerals you're going to attend. So people that like take care of themselves and do that basic little stuff, like, it's not rocket science. None of the stuff I do, which is insane after all that education, all that expense, is just really, why don't you stop causing problems, right? Eat real food, stop causing problems. Eat real food, stop poisoning yourself. Mm-hmm. Just that simplicity. But that's where sometimes where they're just like, well, people just, made better choices. But just like James was saying, like, honestly, people don't know that their styrofoam is leukemia. They don't know that their metal tumblers are lined with BPA plastic or BPS, which is leukemia and lymphoma from benzene. They don't know that their cologne and perfume that's absorbing into their skin is literally made from cancer-causing coal tar, right? And then they use cancer-causing benzene to make the phthalates to emulsify so they can make more money for all those artificial smells. They don't know that aspartame and acetylfame is formaldehyde and converts back to formaldehyde once it hits your stomach, Like, nobody is really telling them that everything's poison, or by the time they learn it, they just really become complacent, like, well, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do.
That's right? Why when anybody offers me a stick of gum, I say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting too. I mean, boy, I think that the longer I practice, I started out, of course, more naive than I am now. But at one point it popped in my head, is there a cabal of people that just want us to be sick? And I was like, that can't be true. That just can't be true, because that would mean there's whole institutions and governmental agencies and, hospitals and like all of it is colluding to keep us sick and depressed and dependent. And, I couldn't believe that 20 years ago. I mean, it seemed like it, but the longer I do this, I'm like, I don't have another explanation, because you and I and James and, other practitioners that are diving into this and trying to get the message out, we know what's causing it. And of course, the companies, the institutions, the governmental organizations, the NGOs, all of that, they know it too. They're not ignorant to this actual science without an S. I mean, without a dollar sign. They're very aware of what we're talking about. So here's my question. Really, the cards are stacked against us. I mean, yes. I fully believe, after 26 years of doing this in the trenches, working with countless thousands of people from all around the world, and I know you have too, I now believe with all my heart and soul, until I'm proven otherwise, there actually is a cabal that wants us to be sick, downtrodden, depressed, and dependent on their pharmaceuticals, keeping us alive long enough to just keep stacking meds until all of your personal money dries out, and it becomes, you know, too expensive to keep you alive and whatnot, and then you just get to die off. So here's my question, my friend, and actually this is from our very beautiful executive producer, Rachel Bradley. She sent this to me. She said, and I'm not just biased, she truly is. She said that we see nations with lower chronic disease and better longevity. What are they doing right that we're not? And what's the first actionable step? And I think this is the big thing. What's the first actionable step that Americans can take right now, this week, today, to close that gap?
Well, that's a good question, because that's a hard one as far as like how we have like kind of wound in and created this monster. And there's just not, outside of grassroots from the people seeking something better, it's not going to happen, right? Until the government, once the government becomes responsible for taking care of sick people, once it hits their pocketbook, they're not going to make changes. But for us individually, it's just grassroots. I just know there's something better out there. And like, even when we had kids, you know, I have 4 daughters, you know, and back when I was married, we had these deep conversations of, is it unethical for us to raise our kids in America? Like, we're going to produce people that's going to make it really hard for them to have healthy children and healthy grandchildren and so on, when we could just move to another country that's already doing things really well, and that's their goal. And we don't have to work hard to be happy, healthy, and to for the next generation. Us, the Gen Xers, the greatest generations ever existed in the history of mankind. We are the first generation to no longer outlive our parents. We're supposed to lose up to 28 years of our lifespan to die in our 50s and 60s instead of our 70s and 80s. But the millennials, they're about half dead already. They're having heart attacks and strokes in their 20s. They're getting diabetes in their teens. And then the Gen Zs, I mean, I don't have a lot of hope. They're microwaving mac and cheese in plastic containers in that microwave. Like, they're all dead. They're just dead. And so soon, like my ex-girlfriend, she didn't realize that bread is supposed to mold. She doesn't know cheese is supposed to mold. Like, we have now lost the past Generation X, that people even know that there used to be something real. And so we're going to try to get a bunch of Gen Zs microwaving in the plastic and cooking rice in plastic and putting trash bags over their crock pots so that they don't have to do dishes. And we're going to get them to somehow overthrow the government processes that have wound so tightly to create this profitable center. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I think if Gen Zs, if the Gen Xers aren't able to really push that coefficient of friction out of the way, I think we're on the downhill on that.
Wow. Well, can I jump in for a second, guys?
Yeah.
Well, earlier, Dr. Jason said something about the health you are is what's on your plate and at the end of your fork. Problem is, you just made that point proven. People aren't eating on a plate or off the end of their fork. They're eating out of wrappers and plastic, and it's a very controversial thing to get people to sit down and actually eat on a plate and eat with a fork. So I think you're saying the right thing. I think Dr. Jason's saying the right thing, but let's go back to the person again. I want to get like omnidirect on the individual. So this is to both of you. Is it true that when people come into you and you start identifying some of their chronic entrenchments, that they're on some type of a med and they have a fear of stopping those medications?
Yeah. So Jason, Doc, you go first.
Well, I think that there's a big fear of stopping meds, right? I mean, I think that we're conditioned, you know, to quote the late great Dr. Fred Barge, you know, there's a pill to sleep, a pill to wake, a pill for every body ache, right? And more now. And I think that we're conditioned that we can solve complex, you know, problems in 30 minutes with room for, you know, 8 to 9 minutes of commercial breaks that can just be solved with popping a pill. And, you know, I was going to say this earlier, but thank you for the opportunity. when we watch those drug commercials, I don't watch a lot of TV. However, I do want to just say this. My wife got me hooked on Nebraska women's volleyball. And if you would ask me 15 years ago, if I'd be watching volleyball or anything like that, I would have said no way. But man, I am hooked. I love watching those kids play. But the drug commercials, I mean, they're streaming, and it's like if it's not every commercial, it's almost every commercial. And they never, ever, you guys start watching this. And I know we probably know this, but for our listeners, they never use the word cure. They'll never say the word cure. It doesn't cure anything. Those drugs don't cure anything. I'll say it again. The drugs don't cure anything. And if I can shout it louder, I will. Not only do they not cure anything, but they are disrupting our biological function, which again, from Dr. G and I practice functional medicine in private practice. I mean, our whole job is just to restore function. All we want ultimately for all of the clients we're working with is for their bodies to work in the most optimum way that they can. We put in these pills that disrupt that in some form or another. And they can get quick symptomatic, resolutions, so to speak. Things like steroids can certainly reduce inflammation. We're talking earlier about ulcerative colitis, other IBDs and whatnot, Crohn's, et cetera. Short-term prednisone certainly might have a place. I don't want to say it doesn't, but long-term, I don't know. I mean, I've seen, Addison's conditions, adrenal conditions induced with long-term use of these types of steroids that shut down inflammation. But then you move it into biologics, fill in the blank biologic of the day, that can help, eczema and gut and this and that. And like everything that you could imagine, you won't be in pain anymore either, And then if you understand the way those work, those drugs shut down. They literally shut down our immune system. And the risks include things like don't be around people with tuberculosis or the common cold, because your body can't fight off the common cold, which we used to call coronavirus, but now we reserve that for COVID. But the common cold can't even be fought off anymore if you're on these biologics. Everybody on this call, everybody listening to this call has cancer cells in their body. I mean, they just do. Our body is programmed to say, oh, that looks weird. I'm going to go eat that cell and destroy it and then, get rid of it and recycle the material and make healthy cells. When we take those biologic drugs, those steroids, we're at massive risk of cancers. But people are like, oh, give me my Humira, man. I can't wait to get my $1,500, $2,000 a week injection, or whatever it is, so that I, don't have eczema and I'm not pooping blood. And I'm not saying that I want people to have eczema or poop blood. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what you're saying, Dr. G, which is there are other solutions. They might not help. They might not work within 24 hours or 12 hours or 12 minutes of taking the drug. But man, like you said, if people can give it a couple weeks, of time and consistency with effort, they're going to notice the changes. 6 weeks later, they're going to be feeling a whole lot better. 6 months later, holy crap, they're a completely unique and different person, So yeah, I think people are conditioned again from legacy media that's funded, by the way. People don't forget commercials. I'll be done here with this statement. Having gone through journalism, I learned a word in my master's degree, which is the news hole. Dr. G, are you familiar with what the news hole is? Yeah, it's an interesting. James, are you familiar with the news hole?
You've talked about it a few times on our show.
We talk about it all the time. I do. I talk about it all the time, right? The news hole is the hole between the news stories that you insert what makes money, right? So the news doesn't matter. That's the important part with legacy journalism, legacy news. It doesn't matter what the story is. I mean, if it's sensational, that's great. On either side of the coin, nobody gives a shit. The important part is that you're feeding people the news hole all the time. You're feeding people that commercial all the time. So legacy media, on top of everything we're talking about with governmental organizations and payoffs by lobbyists and all this other crap, legacy media also wants that. They want that big pharma money. It's big money to them, So again, we have you click on a channel, you listen to half the podcasts or more that are out there these days. You're looking at radio, newspapers, if there are any left, magazines, if there are any left. It's drug after drug after drug after drug after drug. And nobody cares because that's what's putting money in the bank. So ultimately, when you say, are people scared to get off pills? Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't want to use the word fault here. that to a certain no fault of their own, they are conditioned from pre-birth, but certainly from the moment that they're able to consume this media, these commercials, they're told that that's the only solution. So they're scared to death to get off the drugs.
It's stronger than religion.
It's stronger. It is a religion, right? I mean, it's like a cult-like mentality. Anyway, I'm done with my
right. It's the faith in this pill is going to solve my problems.
Yeah, and it's easy. Yeah. I don't have to do shit. I don't have to do anything.
But now we have speedier delivery methods. We have injections.
Yeah.
Well, that's
and people get it sublingual. It's not just a pill form anymore. They find different delivery methods to get you crappier faster.
It's true. It's not funny. Sorry. But that was witty.
Yeah. And that's where 3 out of 4 Americans just chronically manage a chronic condition for the rest of their life until they go broke. Right.
Yeah.
But out of that 2,500 pharmaceuticals that we've synthetically created from coal tar over the last 100 years, they're all based on something natural anyways. And so aspirin is, willow bark, and ibuprofen is willow bark. Tylenol is one of the few drugs that were created completely synthetically from coal tar. But Tamiflu is star of anise, or larch bark tree. Taxol is the bark of a yew tree, which for breast cancer and chemotherapeutics. But do you know, so the one thing that's very different of this is so they just take one molecule out of something that already worked, add something that never existed so you can patent it and make money off it exclusively. But all the natural drugs are still out there, right? But do you know where Ozempic comes from? I'm sure you do.
Tell us.
Huh?
No idea.
It is from the spit of a Gila monster. And so literally what's going to save weight gain in America? Making out with a Gila monster, because it makes your stomach feel sick, which it should. And then if you're feeling uneasy, you don't eat and then you lose weight. But think about that. We're to the point where the goal is to get you to make out with a Gila monster, right? So these people get just sold this synthetic version of the natural drug, and then it's just management. And literally it's a handful of patients over the 20 years that are just I can't imagine getting off this medication, right? But our goal is never to take people off medicines. It's why don't we create a diet and lifestyle that doesn't require supplement or pharmaceutical management? What if you could just exist without both those things? And most people just have a diet and lifestyle that's inconsistent with life longevity, but they don't want to feel the side effects of that. So that's where they end up with the chronic management, because their goal is just to take the batteries out of the fire alarm, but that fire is still going on, creating inflammation and damage. So over the years, honestly, doing it the way that I do it through the lifestyle kind of stuff is people go off of it very, very easy, because once they feel good, then it's easy, right? What do you think, Jason?
No, I think a lot of things about this. The other thing that I've noticed, I get a lot of questions, just like you said, our job is not to take people off medications. I always say that's between them and their prescriber. And what's really interesting is I'll have people that choose to do that. I mean, they're smart, they're trained in, even blood pressure. I'll use that as an example. You got to be on blood pressure meds the rest of your life, right? And they'll watch their blood pressure and they've been on these meds, or their blood sugar, and they've been on these meds. And slowly but surely, as they change their diet and lifestyle, blood pressure's coming down, weight's coming down, blood sugar's coming down, to the point where maybe they're all of a sudden really tired, because their blood pressure's so low, right, or their blood sugar's really, really low. And they'll go to their prescriber. I had this happen to a client of mine many years ago, where she was on, I don't know, I think it was, glucophage, metformin, and I don't know what all, some standard drugs. And her blood sugar was still running in the low 100s, right? All she did, I had ordered some labs on her. I did not have those back. That I said, hey, let's just switch you over to a, really healthy, protein, healthy fat, low glycemic, low diet, a pretty, standard fare, so to speak, right? Yeah. And she, the next day, had messaged us and said, oh my God, my blood sugar is down in the 80s. I haven't seen it one day. I haven't seen it in the 80s, forever. And I'm like, that's great. Her name was Marianne. That's great, Marianne. Keep us posted. This is fantastic. That was on a Thursday. Friday morning, I woke up to a message in our queue that said, hey, I ended up going to the ER. My blood sugar dropped down into the low 40s. I felt really bad. So I ended up, going there, and I talked to the doctor there, and he said, that diet that I was on was dangerous. And I'm thinking, this is insane to me. This is the doctor at the ER. The diet is dangerous. Again, it's a whole foods diet, high in protein, rich in healthy fats. Eat a rainbow with low glycemic, low sugar vegetables, and eat some berries if you want. I mean, really like just whole foods diet. And he suggested, no shit, he suggested that she eat a Snickers bar before bed every night to make sure she didn't get into a dangerous hypoglycemic state while she was sleeping, because she sure hate to see her in the ER again. And I said, Marianne, what'd you say? She said, well, can I just lower my meds or go off my meds? And he said, you could do that, but it might be dangerous. Long story short, that's what she ended up doing. She went off her meds and never looked back. And I think her blood sugar stabilized, in the 80s, and she feels great and lost the weight and all that kind of crap. But it's this kind of stuff where I'm like, I can't believe a freaking doctor told you to eat a Snickers bar before you go to bed so that you don't die of hypoglycemia when you're drugging the poor lady into hypoglycemia if she's eating a healthy diet. It's flipping insane to me. So that's my thoughts on this.
Well, yeah. I'm not a doctor, but I'd take my advice over that.
Well, yeah. I always call my miracle patients like the first ones that we reverse that are incurable. But the first patient we had where we reversed type 1 diabetes, that kid was able to establish normal fasting blood sugars, no insulin. So the mom's like finally jacked up. She's just like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Like, oh, we're not going to have to like figure out how to not die, right? So they went to the endocrinologist and they freaked out. And it was the same thing. They were like, you have to feed him bread and cookies and all this so he can take his insulin. And it's like, but he doesn't, she's like, he doesn't need insulin if he doesn't eat the crap that he was eating before. And the doctor could not just even comprehend what the hell's going on, because again, they never see people reverse. Like it's taken this long. Like I have lots of doctors that will refer their their families to me, never patients. But only in the last like 6-7 years have doctors that are specialists, especially like gastroenterologists, actually refer to me, which is amazing, because they're just like, look, I've seen him reverse. I don't know what he does, but just do what he tells you to do, and like it's amazing. But otherwise, no one. Oncologists, where you have taken a FISH test where they have leukemia or bone cancer, Philadelphia chromosome, and it comes back 100% normal in 6 months, and they're not calling you. They're just like, that doesn't make any sense, because it is never what they see in practice. It is management. Absolutely it is. And there's an indoctrination that occurs when you get your doctorate degrees, whatever they are. And we're indoctrinated to believe that it can't be reversed. It can't be. I mean, it's that way or the highway. And again, the dinosaurs have died out. Fellas, I got to give us a 4-minute warning because I know we have a hard stop in 4 minutes. And James, I wanted to turn it right over to you.
Yeah, Dr. Garrett, after listening to you, I made a note over here. Let me find it quickly. But where is it here? I've been shuffling papers the whole time, looking at notes and making connection points with today's interview. But really it is, you have more credentials and degrees than I've seen in a long time from many guests that we have on our show. It's like most people that read books, you get degrees and certifications. And I think it's pretty impressive to have you on as a guest. And we hadn't even really deep dived into more of the work that you do. Today's just kind of a small sample on sharing who you are and really having a fun conversation with 3 guys that are passionate about getting people better faster, and we all have our little quips, and we're all fun and we're entertaining to a degree. But man, you have done a lot of work over the past 2 decades to become somebody that is helping a lot of people. So I just want to say thank you for being such a leader, and also teaching people and helping people internationally and becoming a resource, man, because I always tell people this. Most people don't take care of themselves because they don't know where to go or who to trust. And when you become a trusted authority, we can start changing the direction of how people view themselves, and they view really I hate to say it, but a wellness model. And the only wellness model out there is don't take the pill, potion, and lotion, but follow a dietary guideline and remove stuff from your life that gets you sick. And that's the hard part. And, I love your advice there. If you want to get better, buy a plane ticket and go somewhere else.
I'll take two.
But I did want to ask you like a final question, and then I'll share some outro information. But is there anything we didn't ask you today that you wanted to share with our audience?
If it's okay to plug, so we have our goal with like genomicwellnessgroup.com is to create a place where chiropractors that really don't deal with the internal stuff and want to help people, that there's a place for where they can refer. We are obviously pro chiropractic. We don't do chiropractic in that sense. So there's no overlap, right? But it's a safe place for like your average chiropractor to send someone to that their only goal is to fix that Crohn's or eczema or migraine. Because it's hard to get people out of pain if they're chronically eating pain or they have inflammatory autoimmune conditions. And so I hope that we can serve as a resource for that at Genomic Wellness. And then for, I'm all about low overhead, simple solution kind of practice. And for the last year, I've been teaching that mentoring functional medicine dual diplomate program. And I just hope that people take advantage of like finding a simple way where they don't price themselves out. Because a lot of times in functional medicine, it's all about expensive labs and chronic supplement management, which usually prices the patient out of seeing you. And that creates a vacuum within functional medicine where literally your solution becomes your greatest like hindrance, But to be able to teach people simplicity, that radical art of simplicity, to where they can just help a ton of people and keep things extremely simple. So
I love that angle. And I will share in our outro script about going to the show notes and checking out your websites and working with you and learn about your dual education model there. And, just back onto the high level supplements and the expensive packages is, most people piss that stuff out anyway. So it's just an expensive toilet full of piss. And so that's number one. and number two, when people get into understanding functional medicine and working with a provider, you just got to trust their advice, and if what you were doing beforehand actually worked for you, don't be stubborn about trusting the advice of somebody that's telling you. So to wrap it up, most supplements you take just become expensive urine. And the other part of it is trust somebody for once in your life. Find somebody as a trusted resource and listen to their recommendations and follow it, and you might get the outcomes that you're looking for. Yeah. And that's the real take home there. Dr. Jason?
I just want to say thank you, Dr. G, Dr. Patrick. I appreciate your time today. The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patient in the care of the human frame and diet and the cause and prevention of disease, from the late, great Thomas Edison from many, many years ago. I think that we're onto something, and I appreciate your time today. And I can't wait to have you back for at least part 2. I don't think we got into, I think I had 20 questions queued up for us, and I think I asked one of them. So, we might have to have a part 4 or 5 on here, but we'll have you back on for part 2 soon. And thank you again for your time today. I appreciate it. Yeah. And thank you guys. You guys are doing fantastic work for the profession. And we should have had that, you guys, a long time ago, but we didn't have, I think, the technology for this, because it really is empowering other doctors to empower other doctors to all help the greater good of the patient. So this is a fundamental kind of foundation for doctors
helping doctors instead of eating doctors.
In closing, Dr. Garrett, this has been an absolutely mind-blowing and deeply inspiring conversation with you and Dr. Jason Bradley. For our listeners who are struggling with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, I love that word. It doesn't roll off my tongue very well, but or autoimmune conditions or any other chronic illness that you've been told you'll have to manage for the rest of your life, damn it. Well, what we heard today might change everything for you. And Dr. Garrett, who has shown us these conditions can be reversed, not managed. We talked a lot about fixing it. Not masked with medication, and actually reversed through functional lifestyle medicine, and not just doing this work for himself. He's actually trained healthcare professionals around the world to deliver the same transformative results, which you guys should go over to the show notes and to this episode and check it out. Check out his websites. But if you're ready to explore real solutions with someone who has spent over 2 decades perfecting this approach, learn more about Dr. Garrett's international telehealth practice and how his evidence-based protocols can help you reclaim your health. And for the healthcare practitioners listening, chiropractors, health coaches, functional med practitioners, Dr. Garrett's dual diplomate mentoring program that he mentioned at the outro can be exactly what you need to take your practice to the next level and truly change life at scale. Remember, nobody's coming to save you, but solutions like this can prove you can save yourself. Dr. Garrett, thank you again. I know my camera just went out once again, but thank you again for your incredible work you're doing, for sharing your wisdom with us today. And to all of you, the Get Better Faster Nation, thank you for listening and for your continued support. You know the best way to show your support is share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message, especially if you're battling a chronic condition or have been told that there's no hope. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and get a chance to see all the behind the scenes tomfoolery and watch my camera turn off. We've got a lot more coming your way. We've got more incredible guests lined up who are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. G.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get Better Faster podcast. Join the movement and visit getbetterfasterpodcast.com to find all our episodes, micro content, and resources to help you and your family get better faster.